I just wanted to welcome everybody to our first virtual salon session. And I wanted to thank Wyatt for being here and being our speaker this afternoon. I know most of you already know Wyatt, but I wanted to give him a formal introduction. Wyatt Johnson's a Boise native, and he's been an Air Club member since 2011, so for the past 8 years. And he also serves on our executive board as our secretary, and Wyatt also has quite the sense of humor. I can hear Teresa, our general manager, laughing down the hall, and I know our board minutes have just come in. So I appreciate that you're going to bring a little levity to this situation that we're in, and your expertise as a lawyer and founding member of the Hansen Johnson law firm. And some personal facts about you that some people might not know is that you're married and you have 2 kids who are currently in college, a son in Washington and a daughter in Colorado. They're currently home with you right now, I understand. But since they've left for college, you and your wife have turned your parenting attention to your 2 Great Danes, 2 very big dogs. Milo and Piper, and I understand you've been bringing them to the office with you right now, so that's fun. That's a silver lining to the social distancing that we're practicing, right? Wyatt's an active skier, but currently recovering from a knee injury as a result of that skiing. So we send you lots of good well wishes. And we're just excited to have you here on this Zoom with us to share your wisdom. And so I will turn it over to you now, Wyatt.
Well, thank you so much, Sharon. And more bigger than that, I've had an opportunity to sit down and think about this and what's happening with this COVID, and how with the courts, the process, and the businesses, what I think is coming up around the corner. And this is based on some experience on this. And it comes from, although I guess starting out with a point, it's, I was talking to somebody a day or 2 ago, and he mentioned to me a month ago, if you would have told me that a package of toilet paper would be worth more than a barrel of oil, he would have told me you were crazy. You would have said they were crazy. This is unprecedented time. And in a lot of respects, I've been thinking and worrying and focusing on the fact that nobody's been through this specific sort of a circumstance before. So how can we guess what's going to happen? But I stopped and I thought about that a little bit more. And I think that based on some recent experience and some things that I've been through, I've kind of got a mental model on, I think, where things may be going around the corner. And this arises out of how the courts process and work with people when you've got debts and you've got problems, and how that's going to walk into people's businesses. So I guess the first question is, why would I know anything about this? And my day job, I'm a lawyer, I do trial work, and most of what I do is commercial litigation. And more importantly, I did commercial litigation through the last recession, and I basically had a front row seat at in a couple of different respects. First, I was the attorney for Banner Bank doing all of the foreclosures and REO work. And so I went through their portfolio on that. Second, I was the personal attorney for the CEO and one of the chief primary shareholders for the Tamarack Resort when that all went upside down. And so he and I worked together for years on strategies trying to put that together. And from that experience, I got to observe how a number of different strategies play out when you have basically a mass recession. And it's different from the ordinary business. It's different from a regular slowdown. And I think that there are lessons that we can learn from that, even though this is some sort of a bat virus and it's a self-imposed recession. I think that there are still some applicable lessons for us to work with on that. So why don't I start with sort of a summary of where we're at right now. Going through, and if we start with the governor's recovery plan that we've got right now, I mean, we know that everybody right now is stopped. They've been staying home for about a month. Nothing's been going on with some minor exceptions. So the governor's plan that he's got together is broken out into 2-week phases, but here's the catch. Everything is tentative until we have the capacity to do one of three things: is either have an intervention for each infected person, we have an effective vaccine, or an effective cure. And really, until one of those things happens, we don't have control of this virus. So that's the catch in the plan. And the governor's saying, well, this is sort of a strategy, but we're really waiting until one of those things happen. Until one of them does, everything's up in the air. Right now, what the plan is, it's structured in 2-week phases. So starting tomorrow, we're going to have phase 1. Phase 1 allows certain businesses to reopen, but here's the catch. No bars, no restaurants, no gyms, no salons, no large venues. You still have the limitations on travel restrictions. So even though you've got businesses opening, basically your whole personal service and your service sector is still shut down. That's phase 1 for the next 2 weeks. In order to move into phase 2, we have to be in a situation where there is downward trend in both the diagnosed or suspected cases, and that we still have adequate hospital and healthcare facilities to deal with an outbreak. And there's a certain limit, there's 50 ventilators and so forth. So as we reopen and people start moving around, first thing that's got to happen is that we've got to avoid any sort of a spike in these infections. If we avoid a spike starting May 15, you go into phase 2. Okay, well then you can have gatherings of 10 people or less, still no bars, still no large venues, and gyms or salons, churches, if they can apply safety protocols, they can open. But it's still restricted, and you're still, to move beyond that, we've still got to get through that, and again, not have any upward trend in any of our reported cases, and still have adequate facilities. If that all works out, you got phase 3 starting June 1. You can have gatherings of 10 to 50 people. Non-essential travel becomes okay, but still no bars, no large venues. And even restaurants are hobbled because it's these facilities, restaurants, they still have to have spacing and distancing, and they can't operate in the normal fashion. If that all works out and we still get there, we get to phase 4, June 15. You can have gatherings of 50 or more with social distancing. Bars are okay, but with limited standing room. You can't have the regular bar interaction. Everybody's going to have to keep distance and stay at their tables. And the large venues, theaters, whatever, they can operate, but they're going to have distancing. So they're not going to be able to fill their seats. So the reality of it is, even under the most ambitious plan, until we get control of the virus with either a vaccine, a treatment, or we're able to trace each one of these cases, the service section of the economy is going to be running. It's either going to be closed or hobbled because of the distancing. We are not going to be able to take up business in the ordinary course. So I think we need to focus on the fact that the segment of our economy, the service industry, is stuck or hobbled. It's going to be for the foreseeable future. And this is going to affect everybody down the chain. This affects all the landlords, the suppliers, the employees, and lenders. And there's no way to get around that. That is going to be pulling. It's going to be out there. We need to be realistic about that now. Okay, so where does this come in? Well, we've got that coming in, and then we've got also something to take a look at is the courts. And why do the courts matter? Because when things go bad and people are trying to enforce their rights and do something about it, it's the courts. That's where you go through and you get your judgments. It's where you do your evictions. It's where you do your foreclosures, and that goes on. The federal courts with this the coronavirus, for the most part, they've slowed down. They have less staff. They're moving more or less like they did before. They'd never had a lot of in-person hearings, and they just slowed that down and decided to deal with that in their discretion. Long and the short, the federal courts were slow before. They're slower now, but they haven't really changed things. For business matters, that doesn't really matter because most of the business-related matters don't end up going through federal court. They tend to be state court matters. The state courts, and we'll start with the regular timeline. The ordinary case in state court, if you're going complaint to judgment, if you've got to go through the trial process, is 12 to 18 months. That was before. That's when things were working. What has happened in the courts here with COVID is, first, basically, April's a lost month. So you've got every docket in the state that went through and had a number of hearings and everything that was scheduled up and deadlines and filings. All of a sudden, that we lost 1 month of business out of the docket. So everything that's already been on the docket's been essentially pushed back a month. After that, the court is going through, and the court has a process for opening. The courts are going to be much more distant. They're going to be trying to handle things remotely and electronically. However, no jury trials in any criminal cases can happen until August of this year. So all of a sudden, any sort of jury trials that were criminal jury trials that have to be dealt with, we only have so many judges and they've got to deal with these, are off the table until August. And criminal jury trials are important to business matters because of speedy trial concerns. Criminal trials take precedence, and criminal trials will bump civil cases every time if they're in conflict. So you've got a backlog of criminal trials. They're going to be out there. They're all going to come online in August, and they're going to bump anything that's a civil trial right out of the gate. Second, there's not going to be any civil jury trials until October of 2020. Civil cases, we can get around that. We can waive the jury trials. We can just go ahead and do a court trial, but still, the same judge that would sit on a civil trial is going to be having to deal with those criminal cases and those criminal jury trials, which they've got a constitutional right to. As a result, I don't see that there is any way that our courts don't face a significant slowdown for this foreseeable future. Getting any sort of rights, I wouldn't be surprised if any issues that come up now, we're 2 years out in terms of getting any sort of civil resolution if we've got to go to the mat. So that's our starting point with the courts. Third, the CARES Act, where this payroll processing has come out, or the payroll loans that everybody's heard about. Personally, I think that those payroll loans sounded like a great idea. I mean, if people are going to go on unemployment anyway, essentially making the employers the administrators of the unemployment program and keeping the businesses open so people can go back to work, great. I think that that's terrific. But here is what you've got. First, the payroll loans that were given. Some of you know about these, some of you don't. Those max out at 2.5 months of payroll. That's what people can get. So, and you can use them for payroll, rent, utilities, mortgage interest, but that buys about 2.5 months of time. Especially for the service segment of the economy that we're looking at here. If we have any sort of spikes or delays, or we're not able to get control of the virus, there's no telling how long our service industry is going to be, if not just hobbled, but shut down. But I think they're still going to be significantly hobbled for a long time. You're not going to be able to have restaurants running full capacity. Movie theaters aren't going to be able to run full capacity. Sporting events can't do anything. You can't fill the seats that everybody's built their business model on. So you're going to continue having problems. There are SBA economic injury disaster loans, which are great, but those are $2 million loans at a nice interest rate. That's going to help some, and it's out there. And I think it's for people that need it. It's going to be great, but we've still got a lag. So it seems to me putting together these results is that it's just significant that it's very likely to happen. That what we're not going to avoid is that because the service segment of the economy is just going to be falling behind. I think that this is going to be a drag that we're going to have to deal with in the economy. The fact is that these businesses are going to fall behind. They're not going to be able to pay their bills. They're not going to be able to keep up with their creditors. They're not going to be able to fully employ people after a certain amount of time, unless we have some dramatic turnaround with this virus. I think if we could get a hold of this virus, we get some sort of vaccine or some sort of a treatment or something that we're able to contain it, and we can get away from the distancing protocols, that changes everything. But otherwise, how do we avoid that? I think otherwise it's just magical thinking. Okay. So that's where we're at now. Where do we start playing heads up? Where is there something significant or some lessons of the past that we can take advantage of? And I think that there is a way to play this smart. And I think it's in two levels. I think we can play it smart on an individual level. And I think that there's a smart, broader level to look at this as well. The first point that's important to recognize is, and I got this from doing the bank workouts in the last in the last recession. First point is that generally speaking, most credit arrangements are not well designed for mass declines in the economy. They don't fit. Your loan structures and your collateral structure, the loans, the collateral, everything that's designed to secure it and keep a creditor safe is designed for a moderately functional economy. Even it could be an economy in somewhat of a recession. But what we observed in the crash in 2006, 2007 was that when the economy drops off and goes into free fall, those credit arrangements tend to fall short. And here's why. Basically, the safety of the creditors is designed on some sort of collateral or recovery. Okay. In an ordinary functioning economy, if you got one bad debtor, if you got a tenant, a borrower, whatever, a business, somebody who's fallen short and can't make their payments, well, the remedy is foreclosure, collection, whatever. You go in and you either evict them, take their stuff, you take that person out of the equation, you take their stuff, you sell it, you get in a different tenant, there's a substitute that can take place of that non-performing individual. And that's where the value comes in. If you've got a restaurant that you've went to, you can grab their equipment, you can sell it to another restaurateur. If you're a landlord, you can get rid of that person, get somebody else in there who's going to perform and do that. Usually somebody who's failing, I mean, once the money's gone, the money's gone. And it's not like you got people sitting around on a lot of cash in many instances. What became readily apparent in the last recession, because you had an economy in free fall and you had market values across the board plummeting, is that those recovery tools don't work, or they don't work well. And the reason is, sure, the banks could go out and foreclose. That had two problems. First is the system that was designed to process those foreclosures has a limited capacity. It's only designed to process so many of these at a given time. In the crash, everybody started processing foreclosures at the same time, and it simply overwhelmed the system. Nobody could get anything done. Nobody could move forward. and it took a very, very long time to move that forward. So add to the fact of the courts being backed up already because of COVID. If you have everybody going and rushing to the courthouse to start enforcing their rights, it's going to double down and you're going to have additional delays. Second, you got no substitute. The problem for a lot of banks with the foreclosures, they could go ahead and they could foreclose on the houses. There was nobody to sell the house to. Some people had money, but not many people did. In this case, in the COVID case with the service industry, the problem's going to be even more, it's going to be even greater, because it's not that you're going to have like certain builders that are in better position and cashed out and other builders that don't. Is you have an entire industry that has been forced to stop working. Not because they chose to, not because they were good or bad operators. They were told to stop. Everyone in the industry is in the same boat. Every single operator, every single restaurant operator, bar operator, mass venue in the state of Idaho is in the same boat. Very much the same in all the other venues. So there really is no substitute. There's nowhere to go if you go ahead and you foreclose on that person on that business that you've got in your restaurant. There's no, who's going to recover? Who's going to buy restaurant equipment? Nobody. Who's going to take over restaurant space? Nobody. Who's going to take over a movie theater? Nobody. So it's essentially there's no value or recovery if you try and take that angle. Second point in a massive downturn is that a lot of failures in the last downturn came out of the fact that people did not recognize the losses as they were coming due. People didn't realize that the paradigm had shifted. They didn't change their perspective, and they didn't change strategically. They acted as if they were still walking through the same landscape. So a good illustrative point was the Tamarack Debacle. A large part of the reason why that got so far out of whack was that at the same time the downturn was starting, Tamarack actually had a separate issue. They were transitioning. They were switching banks from Credit Suisse to Societe Generale. Societe Generale pulled their loan at the last minute. They had the rogue trader that did $7 billion of phony trades. So this happened in 2008, though, right at the start of 2008. And people failed to recognize that there was a slowdown in the market and a slowdown in values. Everybody who was involved in that transaction was thinking that Tamarack was a resort that was worth $850 million. This is based partly on non-compliant appraisals and everything, but that was the mindset. Credit Suisse, who had a $250 million loan, litigated to smoke out the owners and foreclose on what they thought was an $850 million piece of collateral to collect on a $250 million debt. While everybody was doing this, of course, the owners thought that they had an $850 million parcel too. Everybody's lining up on the battlefield and getting out there and spending a ton of money and setting forth to basically do scorched earth. At the time that they were doing this, in order to enforce their position and try and force Tamarack out, Credit Suisse cut off the line of credit, which was being used to fund the completion of a number of projects, including the village properties, which they're kind of the towers down there in the center of Tamarack. Those were pre-sold. They had those pre-sold. They were cash flow. They were cash flow coming in. They just needed to complete them, but they were using the line of credit to do that, complete them, comply with the contracts, shut off the line of credit. They didn't comply with the contracts. All those buyers left, all that money left. Within about 3 months of starting all of this nonsense, you were getting into the first hearings in July or so of 2008. The market completely collapsed. All the buyers went away. None of the product was built, and the project was stuck. nobody had anything to sell and nobody had anything to buy. And it was because everybody was going in aggressively looking to get a big score, and they didn't realize the fact that the market was moving under them. At that point in time, the reality was, if anything, the Tamarack Resort was maybe worth about $60 million rather than the 850. And later on, I don't know what it ended up picking up for in the latest transaction, but I expect it was probably somewhere around 20 million. But the point is that people didn't recognize that the landscape had changed, the market had changed, and what they were fighting for had changed, and they made bad decisions based on it, and they spent a bunch of money, and they undercut themselves in this. And I think really from that point in forward, once they basically killed the life out of the resort and started going forward and the market collapsed, there was no coming back. I think that was probably the biggest mistake in the project. Second thing is stagnation kills opportunity and value. This is something that was readily apparent through the Tamarack process. There were early on a number of suitors for the Tamarack project. Credit Suisse had difficult problems. Credit Suisse was not loaning its own money, it was loaning other people's money, and the other people were suing Credit Suisse over this debacle. Credit Suisse could not agree to or find any sort of a resolution that came to any sort of a sale for less than the 250 million, which nobody was going to get. Because of the inability to do any sort of a sale or any sort of a deal, your time and stagnation killed the value and opportunity there. There were a number of opportunities that if people would have acted quickly, they could have moved forward. Third point out of that is I think that you've got to realize that if you're wanting to be aggressive with somebody, a drowning man will take you down with him. If you go in and you're trying to collect against somebody who sees value, if they see value and they're trying to survive, they will fight back, and that will increase the time and increase the transaction cost and everything about that transaction, and that will suck you down. So putting all these together, what does this mean? This is a mass economic disaster, really, because it's universal. This is not one or two bad businesses. I mean, it's universal, especially for the service sector. What do I see happening here going forward is I see if, and this is the unknown here, but there will be shortfalls if in mass you see the standard creditor playbook, go in, get your stuff applied across the board. It's going to be like running, we're all going to be running to the cliffs like lemmings. And I think that it will cause a long, slow, protracted recovery. Here's why. We're going to overburden the capacity of the courts to deal with these systems. The time, because of the overburdened capacity, is you're going to have lag time. You're not going to have things processed. You're going to have a lot of dead time where opportunities are not going to be able to get taken. And it's going to stagnate and kill things. And when you get to the end, there's not going to be any recovery, because after the time and energy spent fighting about it, again, you've got no substitutes in the industry to help you recover. You've got you got people who are broke. I think that the smart plays in this are going to be in cases where you have people who are creditors, landlords, lenders, equipment suppliers, whoever, who are going to be paying attention and recognizing the realities of what's going on, and see quickly and early when when there is going to be a loss here, and recognizing that and starting to think in terms of realizing that there's going to be a loss and figuring out how to deal with it. I think those who can figure out deals quickly that keep things moving, keep opportunities moving, that avoid stagnation, and have a realistic view of their opportunities, or their, you know, what they're really going to recover and what they're going to lose. I think those creditors are probably going to do better than the ones that go and they just jump on the standard creditor playbook, because those guys are just going to go and they're going to get locked in the court system, and they're just going to be sitting, waiting, and stagnating. Getting in there and recovering faster is better. Second, and this is what remains to be seen here, because it's a mass event. I think that the speed of our recovery is going to have a lot to do with how many creditors opt to look for deals and opportunities, basically quickly take a realistic assessment of what their realities are, what the losses are that are out there lurking, and finding deals and opportunities to keep things moving and to work through the recovery quickly, versus those that go to the standard collection playbook. I think if more people are aware of the situation, playing faster and looking to maximize opportunity quickly, I think the more people that are doing that across the economy, I think that we get a quicker recovery, because we're not going to be stagnating opportunity. We're going to be moving forward, and it just gets to quicker solutions. That's my guess. That's my toss out there. But again, who knows? Like you said, or like I said, it's if you would have told me a month ago that a package of toilet paper would be worth more than a barrel of oil, I would have thought that's crazy. And so, you know, what do I know? But based on my recent experience going through the last mass recession, this is my thinking on kind of the mechanics on what's coming up. And that's what I had. And I'd be happy to field anybody else's thoughts or questions on that, see if I sparked any thoughts, or if some of you know better than me. Maybe Cherry can unmute you.
Yeah, it looks like some people are unmuting themselves. So I think you have some people that might have some discussion around this. So if you want to chat, just speak up.
Hey, Kevin, I just wanted to say thanks for the background on Tamarack. That was very interesting, and appreciate your time and energy in putting this together.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, well, I think it was pretty good. This is Mark Kreisenberg. So.
Hi, Mark. I missed you, man.
Yeah, no lunch table.
I know. No fun at all.
Lunch table 6 feet apart, huh?
It'll be interesting.
That'll be nice to get back to it. I miss Wyatt's good smile and good jokes.
No, thank you. Curious, anybody seen anything? Did I spark any thoughts or ideas with anybody?
Well, I don't know, Wyatt. I'm still working with a lot of developers that are still planning on doing stuff, and I'm pricing a lot of stuff for them, and they're.
Yep.
So I don't know if they could. If nothing happens, they'll probably slow down, but there's a lot of planning going on right now.
I think the developers are it's a different industry. The last recession was definitely housing development. This one is not. I don't think it's going to be coming out of that. I think it's going to be coming out of the service sector, you know, restaurants, bars, movie theaters, any sort of people gathering venues. So I think it's going to come from a different place, and you're going to deal with the domino effects up from that. And granted, your home builders are going to, I think they're a little bit more insulated from that, certainly than they were the last time. But I think it's still going to be there. I think it's still going to be there. There is going to be a slowdown in that segment that we're going to have to deal with, just like we had to with the builders and developers in 2007 and 8.
Wyatt, we have a question on chat from
Okay.
Michael Bethy. He asked, can you tell us a little bit more about your specific areas of practice?
Sure, happy to. Me personally, it's probably the easiest to say is commercial litigation. I try civil cases. If you go through just what's on my desk right now, I've got easement disputes, I've got securities fraud, I've got another a lot of basically contract-based issues. You get into anything basically sorting out money. I've got a couple of big trust cases where questions about fiduciary responsibilities by the trustees. So it's somewhat broad-based. Something about an Idaho practice is you can't. Idaho's getting bigger, but you can't be too overly selective. My firm is a full-service firm. My partner and I started working together. TJ and I started working together on 9/10, the day before 9/11, and it was just the two of us in some rented office space. We've got 13 attorneys now, and we cover pretty much the full table of bets. I've got a tax specialist working out of Twin Falls. I've got an ERISA specialist who came here recently from Kansas. My partner Matt is bankruptcy attorney. He does a lot of bankruptcy, largely for the bankruptcy trustees, creditor work, that type of work. Justin, same, a lot of water law, a lot of real estate law. My partner TJ he's an incurable developer, but a lot of development, land use, and land law in that area. And I've also got Shelly Kuntz, who's going to be a partner here soon, does estate planning, probate, that type of work. And with the tax specialist, we're actually able to handle a whole range of estate planning, not just the small stuff. So,
Thank you. And Mr. Bethy says thank you as well on chat.
great.
Anybody else have any more questions for Wyatt?
Well, all right.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say thank you, Wyatt.
Well, Rebecca, thank you. It's good to at least hear your voice and chat with you again. It's kind of get lonely with all this isolation stuff, only seeing the same few people.
Oh boy, you're not kidding. I'm ready to see my friends at the club again.
Oh, I hate this. I hate this bug. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it.
Well, all my project managers been working from home, but I'm having them come back Monday.
Yep.
They've all got separate offices and stuff, and we've got all sorts of cleaning stuff and math and everything. So
We're opening up starting tomorrow. I've got a lot of staff that they've been pretty antsy to get back, actually, and we got space. We don't have people on top of each other, so we're gonna try. And
what I found out is that even though you have phones and Zoom meetings, you don't communicate very effectively when you're trying to do the kind of stuff we do, and you have 2 or 3 people trying to work on the same project, and one guy's at home here, another guy's at home there, and I'm in here, and somebody. It's just hard. So.
Yep.
Good lesson.
yeah, oh God, I really hope I'm watching desperately for all the news reports, all the pharmaceutical companies that think that they're getting a handle on it. I hope somebody hits it big. I don't care if they cash in. I just want this virus gone.
Well, if they don't get it gone, in the long run, everybody's going to be exposed to it. I mean,
yeah.
Help it.
It's fast. It's a contagious bugger. It's scary. Yeah. All right, everybody.
Okay.
Yeah, well, thank you everyone for joining us for our first virtual salon session, and thanks Wyatt for volunteering
Good.
to be our first speaker. I think it went really well, and I'm open to anybody else has knowledge, talent, or wisdom that they want to share on Zoom. We'll schedule some more of these while we're getting back to our new normal.
All right. Thank you much. I understand that.
Thanks, Wyatt.
Looking forward to seeing you all again soon.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.